So I feel like we're at a point right now where, like this year, I do feel like I have some joy. And I think that it's due to a few things.
Welcome to the Level Up Ministries podcast. My name is Joey Bonfiglio.
And I'm Sandy Bonfiglio. Thank you so much for joining us. So all of our podcasts are about leveling up our mind, our relationships, our faith, and our health. So today's podcast is all about how to get through the holidays, especially during difficult times, like loss in our lives or just major changes. So right now we're celebrating Christmas. So this is a joyous time of lots of tradition and celebrations. And for us, it looks a little bit different, especially with what we've walked through. So, for me, I've lost my mom and my grandparents. And so I feel like, growing up, I just always imagined our holidays to look like the holidays that I was a part of. So I, would go to my grandparents' house. The house was full. There were tons of people. It was loud. All my cousins were running around. I just always imagined Christmases with my children to look like that. And so it's been a struggle for me because they don't. And so, one thing was us moving here to Florida. That was a major change. My grandparents had passed, before we left. And so we already had kind of made a shift in our Christmas tradition of going to my aunts instead of my grandmother's. And that was hard, but we're still all together. And so even though it was a little bit different, we still, had that family tradition of all being together.
I think so. We had our Christmas party too, with my side of the family early in December. And then once my dad passed, it kind of looked different. Not that people stopped. It just didn't have the same. It wasn't the same feel, obviously, because he wasn't there, and so things started to change, at least for me, 4 years before we moved.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So then we decided to come to Florida and move from Connecticut, where all of our family was, and now it no longer was a little different. It was completely different. Right. In that we were by ourselves, and all those traditions that were difficult for us because of just those little changes now became really difficult for us. And so trying to figure out how to create new traditions was a challenge. And then my mom passed now 3 years ago, and that created a lot of pain and struggle for me during the holidays, where that joy that I'd always experienced, I just had a really hard time feeling that and experiencing that. So I feel like we're at a point right now where, like this year, I do feel like I have some joy. And I think that it's due to a few things. So one, I feel like, I've been really leaning into the Word of God and what God says about loss, because He says there's a season for mourning, and there's a season for grief, but then you move on from that season. And I've really been trying to be encouraged by that, knowing that, there's moments of grief, but then you can walk out of that and feel joy. And so I think that one of the things that I've been really trying to lean into is how Jesus said at the Last Supper, "Do this in remembrance of me." And that thought of remembrance, I feel like when my mom first passed, I wanted to not remember. Like I just wanted to forget, and I wanted to pretend that I had no feelings. Like I just wanted to forget everything that we used to do, and just thinking about her and those traditions brought pain. And so I really wanted to just stuff that and just forget. And I've really been leaning into the fact that remembrance is so important and gives comfort. Yeah. And so doing things in remembrance this year, I've been doing that the most. And I think that's why I'm feeling so much more joy, that rather than thinking back to that tradition and thinking, oh, it's not the same. Oh, what I've lost. Thinking about all the things I lost, opposed to the things that I gained from having my mom be my mom.
Yeah.
You know, she loved baking cookies and making these Portuguese cookies, these biscoitos, we call them biscoitos, and you know, I hadn't made them. And this year we made them. And it was very comforting. I didn't have that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so sad that she can't be here and make them. I was thinking instead, again, that switch of my mindset,
Right.
like how awesome it is that she left this tradition with me, that I can now bake these biscoitos with my kids.
Yeah.
And it's in remembrance. And so that's really been encouraging for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of it comes down to mindset. I know for me, it's like there was so much change. Like when we moved down here, you know, aside from that, those losses, which are huge, prior to all that was when, you know, COVID happened, and you know, so that was a whole other weird kind of environment. You know, here you're moved to a totally different, Connecticut to Florida, the lifestyle is a lot different. The mentality, the everything is different, and it's like as soon as that we're trying to transition, you know, something like that comes along and kind of knocks you for a loop. So that first holiday, you know, looked different in general for a lot of people. And I think, you know, when it comes to loss and just kind of like what you were talking about, getting through the day or forgetting rather, you know, for me initially it was just like, okay, let me just treat this as just another day, you know, even though it's, you know, it's Christmas or Thanksgiving, whatever it would be, and try and make it the best for the kids, you know,
Yeah.
even though, you know, for them it would look different too because they, you know, have their cousins, but again, like it's funny because our past, we always think about like the kind of the best parts of those, you know, the past, and I think, you know, what's comforting, you think, you know, like our cousins even in Connecticut aren't always getting together every year together as a big, you know, so just in general, like life changes, and I think in all aspects, and the more you can kind of just adapt to knowing that change is inevitable, kind of the better. So it's like I've kind of tried to change my mindset into thinking that, you know, even with, you know, our parents, you know, if we hadn't lost them, like there's changes happen, people move, people, you know, just and just the more we can kind of be fluid and go with it, you know, the better. And again, easier said than done for sure, because you know, the grief and the loss of not having that relative there, especially on a holiday, is tough. But I think with, you know, like with time and like you said, remembrance, and you know, and just knowing that they're, you know, they're looking down and they're in a better place anyway. Well, you know.
And I think too, you know, even in a situation of, you know, first moving and feeling that grief of leaving Connecticut behind, because we had to grieve that. You know, there's all different types of grief. So that was something, you know, I think about like, you know, individuals right now that might have gone through a divorce or that might be dealing with sickness. And there's so many things that create hardship, especially during the holidays. But I think it's so important to also reach out and stay connected. I know for me initially as well, you know, I not only wanted to kind of forget, but I also wanted to isolate.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to connect with people. I didn't want to see people who were doing well because I was struggling. And so I really felt like that put me in a worse place. So I realized, especially this upcoming year, that was something that was causing me more pain. And so I've made a real effort to try and reach out to people. We ended up having a Christmas party, you know, this year. We had some other little get-togethers, but I just feel like that piece is so important too, that I think sometimes our natural instinct is to just isolate and be by ourselves and be in our grief or in our struggle, rather than sharing it, connecting with others, walking with other people with it, and within that, there will be joy, you know. So that is my, I think, main encouragement to everyone. You know, one, just to reach out, and two, to do things in remembrance, to think about what's been gained and not what's been lost.
Yeah.
It's what we take and what we can walk with.
Yeah, the traditions that we can pass down to our kids, or whether it's baking or stories. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that was everything that was on my heart.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that?
Yeah, I just just like you were saying, it's like it's obviously at first year, it's difficult, and the more you can stay connected with community or someone that you're close to, the better. And again, it's with time, and again, being in the Word helps, because you're looking to for God's glory, and just trying to there's just a lot of healing in that too.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And I think in remembrance, just to think back to my mom again, and like what she gave to me, what I gained from her, and that was even just the way she served. And she loved to serve other people, and she would go to people's homes, and she would bake for them and give them things, or she would invite them to her home, or she loved to go to Hallmark and stand in the Hallmark aisle with the cards for hours and read through cards to find like the perfect card to give somebody. And so just remembering those things that the people that were in our lives did, and then doing it in their remembrance and their honor, it just gives such comfort. I wish that I had embraced that earlier, because I feel like these last 3 years might have been a little bit easier. But there's also a grieving process, and we have to kind of go through that process as well, and it really depends on where you're at with that. But I really found that to be incredibly healing for me, for sure. So we thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that this was an encouragement to you, and we hope that you have a wonderful holiday.
Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.